This week, we saw cold, hard evidence of the Trump campaign, indeed the Trump family, eagerly intending to collude possibly with Russia, a hostile foreign power, to influence American elections. After these latest revelations, it's becoming clear we have suffered a desecration of our democracy not seen since Watergate.
Greetings and welcome to ITR Live. We're back here in Studio 130 for another fun-filled, action-packed episode of Iowa's most technologically gifted conservative podcast. I'm here with everyone's favorite John Hendrickson and a few people's favorite Chris Ingstad, and we're ready to thrill you and excite you. And we have got a gigantic episode for you today, or at least it seemed like that as I was writing notes this morning. John came in fired up, so there's no telling where we're going to end up today. So, gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, that's right. That is the energy that I expect. just coming in hot. So, okay. Well, here you heard there at the outset that is former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi talking about the quote unquote Russian collusion of the Trump campaign. And so
it was a threat to democracy.
Desecration of our democracy is what I heard there. So we're gonna come back around to that. Among other things, we're going to talk about the release of Special Counsel John Durham's report and a little bit of the Iowa versus Florida banter that's going on in our politics. John's got some thoughts on that. But it's been a busy few days in Iowa politics. We had both, a planned trip to Iowa by President Trump for a rally. We had Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in Iowa for a series of events. So we're going to cover all that. One interesting thing to me that I think is pretty significant here in central Iowa is Jay Byers leaving the Greater Des Moines Partnership after many years of leadership, and really a very effective leader of that organization is going to be president of Simpson College. So for those of us that kind of operate in and around central Iowa and governance, that's a pretty significant move. So congratulations to my friend Jay Byers.
Yep, back to his alma mater, right?
That's right. So, and I think it's an interesting time and John, I know you appreciate this. It's an interesting time for some of these small private colleges as they try to reposition themselves to be successful with what's changing in higher education. And you with your history at Iowa Wesleyan, which recently closed, and it's I think there's real challenges for some of these small private colleges right now.
There is, yeah. There's a lot of competition for students and as well as for dollars, other resources, the
past so many years with such a strong job market. Right, jobs are in demand. Demand for college education, at least in the eyes of potential. An 18-year-old is walking into this world and has the choice to go to a 4-year college or 2-year, right, and lay out thousands of dollars, or step into at least by an 18-year-old standard, fairly lucrative job or career. This is what we see, right? When the economy is booming, enrollment and other things in college goes down. As the economy falters, then people head back to school or give that second thought. So we'll see, but the strong, economy or job market has not been helpful for college.
Well, and that's something I think I'd like to look at a little bit more in the future is some of what's changing in higher ed. But we have breaking news right now, guys.
Oh.
Breaking news. There's actually activity out here in the courtyard. Well, one of the guys is round in the corner here, but nope, there he goes. He's over there. So in our construction update, we actually have activity right now. There's a bunch of new flags planted out in other areas of the courtyard. So like maybe there's a whole new phase planned.
Maybe it's our fiber internet.
Oh, now that would be exciting.
West Des Moines rolled out the red carpet to to fiber. Hasn't hit our building here in West Des Moines yet.
Yes, and I think what it took to actually get in this neighborhood was the recognition that the ITR Live podcast was filming from this area.
We need more bandwidth.
It is a challenge to get all of the action that's in our in our episode
Or
up to the internet.
Or
So-
if that patio is in fact a secret deep state government bunker, they're going to need more data capabilities, and that's what's bringing the fire.
It could be. I'm sticking with my prediction that this is some secret installation. Ace Tomato Company, pick whatever you want, John. But I'm sticking with it. Okay, let's get serious, guys. Now he's coming back. So all right, well, very good. John, let's back up, I guess, a little bit. So we had, as I mentioned, a lot of presidential activity in Iowa. This was really Florida Governor DeSantis's first big, event into Iowa. I think he was in Sioux Center, Cedar Rapids, and then sort of an impromptu event in Des Moines. And President Trump was scheduled to have a rally here in Des Moines and then canceled ostensibly because of the weather, because there was a tornado watch that night. But it seems like there was some real back and forth banter between all good natured between Governor DeSantis and Governor Reynolds about this Iowa versus Florida. Is Iowa the Florida of the North, or is Florida the Iowa of the Southeast? And that isn't anywhere near the pejorative that the national media would probably hold it out as. But what have you looked at and found out so far on that?
Yeah, this is interesting because I think it goes back to something we've talked about before on this program. I don't know who coined this term, but it's a term I've heard called red state federalism, and basically it's of not all Republican governors, but a fair amount of Republican governors in various states, whether it's Iowa or Florida, that are doing some very good state-based conservative policies, and that's creating a lot of competition. In this case, both Governor DeSantis and Governor Reynolds have done a lot of good things in their respective states, and so a lot of times DeSantis is given credit as sort of being the most conservative governor in the nation, but I think when you look at the records, if you want to look at Iowa versus Florida, I think Iowa has done a lot of good things that match or even rise above what's going on in Florida. And that's not to say that DeSantis hasn't done a good job, but I think, for example, that both governors, both Governor Reynolds and DeSantis, have been fighting the cultural war against the radicalism of the woke ideology. They both have been looking at some pro-growth economic policies, but I would argue, and it's especially on the economic front, the fiscal policy, that I think Iowa is probably beating Florida's record, because if you look at what Governor Reynolds has done on the tax front, our tax reform is basically Iowa is still leading what's been called the flat tax revolution. And more importantly, and this doesn't get a lot of attention because it's not exciting, but I think Governor Reynolds and the Iowa legislature have done a far better job of controlling spending, of keeping spending limited. And that's why, I think it was such a big recognition that last year Cato gave her the highest ranking in the nation in their report card on governors, which measured fiscal conservatism. But both states, you see Iowa has done a good job promoting and protecting Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms, expanding school choice and parental opportunities for education. And so this is healthy competition going on between these red state governors, and we see other states doing pro-growth tax reform as well. And so I don't think Ron DeSantis can claim the mantle of being the most conservative governor. Like I said, I think Governor Reynolds is neck and neck, and maybe even above him.
I've said it many times. I wouldn't trade my governor for any other one in the country. Yeah. I think, John, there's another aspect to this, that the competition between states, that's great, because it does sort of encourage folks to continue to pursue, the next best conservative reform. But with Iowa going first in the nation, And now these folks come to Iowa and they have to measure how they stack up with Iowa, and I think that's great. I know that Governor Reynolds likes to go out on the national stage and proudly talk about all of our accomplishments here. But what's really cool to watch is when they all come here and they have to get out and try and communicate with Iowa voters about how they're going to take that conservative agenda to D.C. So I love all of that. Yeah. That's great. I think that's a great project. And I imagine that with another, how many months we got? 8 more months until the Iowa caucuses. I suspect we'll probably be coming back to this issue over time. So with regard to the kind of a segue here, that one of the issues that we don't talk about on the show because we're a fiscal policy organization is the issue of life, protecting unborn life. And Governor DeSantis, recently they have had a fetal heartbeat bill going through Florida. And that's something that we've done here in Iowa that's on the books and still moving through the court system on trying to get that injunction lifted. But, and that's always been, and probably always will be, a key issue to Republican primary voters. And so the end result of that Iowa versus Florida law would probably be about the same thing. But President Trump had some interesting comments about that fetal heartbeat bill. And the gist of it was saying is that it might be too harsh, that going to what some of the national media would call a 6-week ban, which is about where a fetal heartbeat bill would land. But that's really drawn the ire of a lot of, especially in the evangelical community in the Republican base. I mean, guys, you've seen this, right?
And what's interesting about that is the evangelicals, broadly speaking, pretty much stayed in Trump's corner for a lot of the time, and probably made up a big block of the Trump supporters. And it'll be interesting if he maintains this position, right?
Right.
If DeSantis can draw a contrast between him and President Trump on life, it will be interesting to see how the evangelicals side, because that was definitely a key piece of Trump support.
Maybe it's just my own thing, or maybe it's a reading polling pro tip. Evangelicals is a term that's used very loosely in the national media and even in polling when you try and come out with breaking down demographic data. There's a lot of people that would consider themselves a part of that demographic. Mm-hmm. Some of the breakdowns of how people view policy and different political leaders gets a lot different when you ask them how often they attend a church service. Is that especially in the Deep South and the Bible Belt, where there is a much more of a cultural Christianity, and I'm not I don't say that to denigrate folks, but if you ask, if you are a weekly attender of a church service, you view, even inside the Republican Party, you view things quite a bit differently. So that's my sidetrack, is that I think using the term evangelical can get a little sloppy sometimes.
Okay, well, thank you for calling me out on that, and I appreciate that. So, leaders, but I think my point is that we can all
used it first. That was on me.
The point that we can all understand is, if you want to sort of segment Trump supporters, there are the folks that would have fit under the alienated or abandoned class from our friend Tim Carney's book, for instance. Yeah, and that is a different set of voters than the ones that we sometimes sloppily call evangelicals, and that's my point.
Yeah, and I think to that point, which is a point that President Trump makes over and over, those are the folks that he brought into the Republican Party, mm-hmm. and that turned out to vote for him. And John, we've explored this. I know, whether they're previously sympathetic to Labor or Democrat, mm-hmm. or maybe weren't voters at all, but there really is a chunk of the Republican electorate that is unique to President Trump. I think that's absolutely fair.
And that chunk may not have strong feelings on the issue of life. I do not know, but the chunk that we sloppily call evangelicals, I think we can agree those are two separate segments of Trump supporters.
And we were talking about this morning. Look, I don't think that President Trump needs messaging advice from any of us, because he is well gifted at it or whatever. But if I was advising President Trump, lean into the Supreme Court justices that you nominated when asked about the issue of abortion. I mean, we've got where we're at because of the justices that President Trump put on the court. And that should not be lost on anyone. Now, that seems like a whole lot easier case to make because then it's running on his record rather than trying to parse out where we're at on an abortion bill. But so be it. But I think, okay, so it took us 15 minutes, but we're here now, John. We're getting around to the special counsel, John Durham, report on the Russia investigation, the FBI Crossfire hurricane investigation. The short version is that it was all a bunch of made up crap by the Hillary Clinton campaign. Is that a good enough summation?
Yeah, I mean, President Trump was right. It was a witch hunt all along. I mean,
we heard from Hillary, or we heard from Nancy Pelosi at the outset there, the desecration of our democracy.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
And I think the other thing, it'll be interesting. Where does this report go from here? Will there be anyone held accountable for this? Because it basically is truly frustrating, I think, especially for conservatives to see this. And the other thing that has kind of been not necessarily buried in the headlines is the House committee's unveiling of all the foreign money that's been going to the Biden family, and that's just I think Representative Comer's findings have been quite alarming, showing what's flowing in and enriching the Biden clan's pockets, and now Durham just shows that this witch hunt was started in the Hillary campaign with the Steele dossier.
Is the point of Durham's report really that Hillary Clinton or her campaign and anybody else kind of started this and did this? Or was the point of the report really more the FBI's missteps and where they followed their own protocols, where they didn't, who they listened to?
It was both because it was the phony Steele dossier that triggered the FBI and the Department of Justice to start their investigation.
Look, I wanted this noted. I admittedly got a little distracted reading about this because on the opposite page of the newspaper was a story that the USDA wants to ban chocolate milk in schools. So I understandably lost my focus on the Trump and Russia and read about chocolate milk. But nonetheless, talk about what Durham thinks he found in terms of how the FBI handled this.
Well, going back to this Steele dossier, which is, we've heard about, which was, we already knew had been largely debunked. Mm-hmm. We knew that going in. And that was a report that, John, help me if I'm wrong, I don't know that the Clinton campaign necessarily constructed it, but bought into it. Yeah. And it was found out that all of these sources that Steele had were all making up their stories. Yeah. All of this weird, crazy stuff that you heard about Trump and Russia was all fabricated.
And that
right?
Yeah. And to answer Chris's question, that then fed in to the FBI's investigation of the president and his campaign, which then led to the Mueller's being hired as a special prosecutor to dig into it, and then led into the the phony impeachment.
Right. So we take the phony Steele dossier, the Clinton campaign shops that to the FBI, probably with the knowledge of the Obama administration. Mm-hmm. I think that's in there. So then the FBI takes it and runs with it, and then the entire national media takes it and runs with it.
Yeah.
Now, if you go in there and unpack some of what was happening during the 2016 election, I mean, you saw all these national security, quote unquote, experts talking about this.
Yeah.
And it was all premised on fabricated information that it just completely wasn't true. And to see how the instruments of government that exerted, and I think one of the raw, unanalyzed, and uncorroborated intelligence was the term that was in the report. That it wasn't just that they didn't care; they ran with it, and so now you have the FBI. using this to exert, to get a result in a presidential campaign. I don't think we can go too far with too strong of words in describing that, can we?
Look, the media long ago lost their credibility as a completely neutral observer. Okay,
Right.
Not saying there's not individual
well,
media
Republicans
members.
are pouncing on this story now. They're seizing on it too.
But, I mean, the FBI. I mean, that broadly falls under justice, right? Justice is blind, right? That we're not supposed to tip the scales either way. We're supposed to follow our processes, and again, some of the words that came out, I think, from there is the FBI had a departure from their norms, right? And the way they handled this one was in contrast to their normal way. They listened. They gave like extra credence to politically motivated folks, and that's the scary part. Like, who cares what talking heads say? Who cares what political operatives say? We all expect that from them, but you know, I mean, this is really sort of an instance of an institution failing. Right, because if the law, if the law can't remain neutral and stick to the process, then we're kind of all just stuck.
Yes, and I want to use stronger words than failed us, because our government will fail. Our government's going to let us down because it's imperfect. Any institution created by man is going to be imperfect. It was specifically weaponized to decide a national election, and then carried forward. Frankly, we're now on probably 4 national election cycles, 16, 18, 20, and 22, where this garbage continues to be peddled.
Yes.
It has become the rallying cry of half the country. So what's going to happen? So we found out that it's all garbage. Is anyone going to apologize? Is anyone going to be held to account?
I don't know. I mean, my understanding, and I have not read the full report, but my understanding reading some of it is that there's no recommendations for holding anybody accountable in the report in terms of
this may not be up. Yeah, I think that's right. But
literally, as we've been recording, I got an email from former President Trump on this very topic. I'm not making this up, you guys here, but he tells us the intelligence community framed him, right? And if you actually want to do so here's how we can go make a contribution to save America. So there it is. Contribute to one of the president's campaign arms, and there you go. So that's just as good as a court decision. So.
Wow. Look.
That was not the outcome you thought we were going to get? Okay.
One thing, I sincerely hope, look, we do have one thing, which is a Republican majority in the U.S. House of Representatives. And I know they're consumed with the debt ceiling right now, and they should be. But there should be real investigations happening there. It's really the one piece of federal power that Democrats don't hold. Do I expect that the Clinton campaign will be held to account? Not at all. I mean, we could go into the laundry list of things that the Clintons have allegedly gotten away with over the years.
And the Bidens.
I suspect that making up a report about a political opponent is child's play compared to some of the other allegations that the Clintons have been involved with. The sad thing is that where do you go for objective truth? Half of Americans bought it all from the national media, and we can talk about, well, the media's in the pocket of the liberals. Well, yes, they are, but where do we go for objective reporting about what's going on in the world? We can't trust the FBI. Apparently, we can't trust our national media. Those are the underpinnings of a healthy, functioning democracy. I don't know. I don't think anyone has really played out where this all ends.
I mean, that's third world stuff,
yes.
Right? Where you can't trust I don't want to say institutions, but
Look, President Trump has every right to be furious about all of this. Now, politically, I don't know that it benefits him to try and relitigate 2016 and 2020. I mean, elections are the ultimate way of, getting back at somebody and winning the next one. But he should have plenty to say on this subject, and it would be absolutely appropriate. And I think it's a question that every American should have to wrestle with.
I think this is you two might disagree with me, but I think it's a further example of not just a breakdown of our entire nation, but it's basically a war that's going on among conservatives.
Yeah.
Whether it's President Trump or the cancel culture that's been going on, and I mean, there's certainly an effort by the left that's being supported by mainstream media to tear down conservatives, to silence conservatives, and if you don't toe their ideology, that they're going to try to shut you down. And I mean, regardless, we could have a debate on what someone thinks of President Trump, but I mean, there was forces out to get him even before he won the election, and these people were trying to undermine him in both political parties, and so I think this is just an example of how troubled our society is, especially if you're a conservative.
Above all else, and I think many Republicans, many appreciate about President Trump is that he would keep fighting. Didn't back down. I don't think he's going to back down from this. I think he's going to fight his way all the way through it. And that has been to his credit. And so, but not every leader can do that. But it's troubling. What I do know is this, because I don't want to end the episode on that. That's kind of a downer. There's nothing going on out there. Chris is out here peeking out at the courtyard to see what the latest is, but still nothing to report. Is that we are blessed to live in the great state of Iowa, as free as any state in the land. I still believe in the American people that don't want this crap for their government. They want freedom. They want liberty. They want rule of law. And we get to live in Iowa, and we have freedom, and we're going to, at least the three of us at this table, are going to keep talking. And I know that many of our members out there feel the same way we do about these issues. We have a set of leaders across the state that want to be a part of that as well. And so I'm still optimistic about these principles and where we are at with them today.
Yep.
That's it? Okay. Very good.
I mean, you kind of said you were going to close.
I don't.
Well, you look like you had something else, Chris, and that's always appropriate. You're always allowed to come in there.
I agree with everything you said, but I don't know if I'm optimistic.
Well, look, we're producing an episode, a podcast here. We want people to tune into the next one, John. So as we end, we could just slowly descend into darkness.
Well, I'm the Charlie Brown or the Eeyore of this podcast.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'll make 2 quick points.
Okay,
is one. None of these things that we just talked about from the special report on had anything to do with policy. These were not political or partisan talking points. Right.
That's a very good point.
Folks on the right and the left, we want to get to the point where we can argue where tax rates should go. Right. We want to get to the point where we can have these policy debates. And folks on either side of the political aisle should be concerned. Right. Because nothing we just talked about was of a partisan or even a policy discussion. Okay. We want to get to that. And then in terms of optimism for the future, our country started because of the strength of the individual or individuals banding together. It's never been about the strength of a central government. Frankly, we got our start by people fleeing a central government. We worked very hard to make sure we have a federalism system that kind of pushes back against a central government to some extent. So, yes, my optimism remains because we've always been about the people, not about the government itself. But that's a battle. It's ongoing. It reminds me of freedom is only one generation away, or a republic is the best form of government as long as you can keep it. Like, it will take active work from all of us, and it needs to be from both sides of the spectrum to protect really what makes America great, what makes America what it is.
Yep, I agree completely. It's a great way to close. I think of the point you made that this is about individuals, not government, and it's about individuals expecting more, demanding more, fighting for that freedom. That's a big part of what we're trying to build here organizationally. It's what we're trying to build on this podcast, that many of you out there listening to this are part of that movement to try and preserve and advance those things that make America special. So great. All right, gentlemen, I said we had a lot to talk about, and we did. We a lot longer than our usual episode. So I know you all are eager to get back to your work. John's got a lot of really good articles he's working on.
I got spreadsheets full of tax rates and revenue.
Spreadsheets. Yeah. Well, I'm going to do whatever. I guess I got to go in the tank and produce this thing. So, all right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to tell your friends. Don't forget to leave us a good comment. And definitely don't forget to tune in next time on the next episode of ITR Live.